Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another 101 class of the Everybody Eats show. Man, this is probably the third
Three
one
for
or
three,
so.
baby.
3 for 3 that we've been doing. So we did wholesaling, we did business taxes. Sorry, we did wholesaling, business taxes, and now we're doing personal credit. All right, so we have here Mr. Hernandez. He's been on our show once before. So
Yes, sir.
just want to thank you very much for
Thank you.
inviting. We got the office, right? We got the whole office setting. We got the lights going on outside. You know what I'm saying?
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing. So we're gonna give you guys a one-on-one class on how to build personal credit and how to avoid getting bad credit and how to prepare that. So nice one-on-one class for you guys. Before we get started, make sure you're following us on all platforms. On Instagram, Everybody Eats Show. That's the same for Facebook and TikTok. That's at Everybody Eats Show. Our YouTube channel, Everybody Eats Show. On YouTube and Twitter, EBE_show. And wherever you listen to podcasts, we're up there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all that good stuff. Make sure you're listening, tune in, share with a friend, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Engage. Bless your boys. Bless your boys. All right. Anything else we got, Mr.
Nah,
Mr.
we good. All the housekeeping items. So we can get this show started.
Let's get it started. All right. Mr. Hernandez.
Sir.
All right. So if you could introduce yourself for the people who didn't tune in to the first episode that we did.
Yes.
Shame on you.
You're right. All right. This is
Definitely go back and tune in though.
Definitely go back and tune in. That was
Yep.
through Zoom. Now we're in person, right?
Yes.
So only moving up from here.
Definitely.
So if you can introduce yourself, where you from, what do you do, talk about your business real quick, and then we'll get started with one-on-one class.
So name's Aaron Hernandez. I'm originally from out here in Norfolk, Virginia. Well, I would say originally, but I've definitely moved around a lot. But this is definitely the community that I serve. So I definitely like to bring the information and to try to help people elevate, especially out here in Norfolk, man. There's a lot of people that's trying to do really dope stuff. And we just want to try to get that information out there. The business focus is definitely credit repair. I mainly deal in personal credit, but I also deal with business credit. But that is something that I only have limited slots for, but I still love to just spread the knowledge for people because really, man, credit is such a very powerful tool, but it's even stronger when you pair it together with business credit. So just mixing those two things together and also just trying to preach to people how credit really works and just educate people on those things. I always tell people that I'm not salesy at all. People always kind of get taken back by that because when they're on the phone with me, I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm a firm believer that you don't have to sell anything to people that already need the service. So all I'm doing is laying out the information, the education piece behind it so that, pretty much we can continue to elevate.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Yeah. So starting from that, we'll get right into it, right? So talking about main business is credit. So personal credit, right? Could you was there like a definition, if you could kind of describe like what is personal credit? Why do I need that?
Yeah, so you need your personal credit for just about anything, man. And we unfortunately a lot of us find that out the hard way when we already need the credit. But personal credit is just your financial assessment of yourself. Honestly, just to make it the way I like to lay it out to my clients to just make it more understandable is that credit is just really your financial resume. People forget that when you are applying for banks, that banks are actually investors and that's how they make their money. If they lend you a car, they make money off going off the interest rate. If they lend you a house, they make money off going to interest rate. So all you're doing is turning in your financial resume saying that, hey, I'm financially worthy. You can look at this to see that I'm that and I can give you a return on your money. That's all it really is. It's just your financial risk, financial worthiness. Can we trust you? And to kind of just dumb it down, that's really mainly what it is. And it allows you to continue to take out loans, continue to ask for really just about anything else, man. Because it's just like, if I were to borrow money from you and I can show you that I'm trustworthy, then, that's pretty much where it would go from.
Got it. Mm-hmm. So that's where credit score comes in?
Yes, your credit score. That's definitely one that would come in. So your credit score is calculated in multiple different ways, but again, the way I like to teach people in credit is that I like to simplify it. I like to give them analogies and how it works. So your credit score really is just calculated off your positive and negatives. Like it does not see dollar amounts. It's a common misconception that people have. Your credit score is just positive or negatives. If you have a lot of positive stuff on there, then you're going to have a high score. You have some negative stuff on there, then it's going to affect you. But that's definitely when your credit scores would come into play.
So what would you define as a positive or a negative?
So there are actually definite. So it goes off of a tier system,
Right.
and so off of that tier system, I don't like to put too much attention to that. It gets kind of confusing for a lot of my clients, but for the purpose of this, because we want to go for this conversation a little bit more in depth, I'd rather not focus strictly onto the credit scores, because that, for one, you can easily Google it and we know what they are. But what I like to emphasize for people is your credit report is really the most important portion. Your credit score just gets you into the rooms. It just gets your feet into the doorway. So most of the time, for example, home loans, a lot of lenders will just ask for a 620. So that be considered, like a fair credit score, or like just right there with the good section. But that just gets your foot to the door to see if you can apply for there. It doesn't necessarily mean you get approved. What determines if you get approved is your credit report, which is your overall, history and report behind it. So when people ask me that, I like to tell them that, because I feel like now a lot of times people don't talk about that. We're very much just like, oh, I need to have a highest credit score. I need to be at 750 plus. But that's not necessarily the case, because I also have clients who have high credit score, 750 plus, and can't get approved for stuff because they have multiple inquiries onto their report multiple times. It got pulled, so they can't get approved either. I also have people that's in the sixes and is getting approved for stuff because they have a better, thicker report than the other one and have more history. So, that's the part I like to emphasize for people.
Okay, so credit report obviously then holds more weight than.
Yes. They both go hand in hand, though. Again, I just like to talk about the portion that a lot of people don't talk about. Your credit score is just saying that, hey, can you apply here? If we're saying that if you want a house, you only need a 620, then it just means you can go ahead and apply. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll get looked at. At the end of the day, when underwriters are looking at it, what determines it is your credit report.
If you go with the financial, I like the financial resume analogy. So it sounds like the score is kind of the GPA, but the report's like the whole thing and who you are as a person. So
like classes that you took.
Yeah. And it's funny because I actually give that as one of the analogies. That's one of the analogies I give out to people to just make it easier, man. Because credit can sound so complicated, but that's all it really is. It's just your GPA. So not to jump ahead, but even when the way it's calculated, when I tell people that, hey, positive or negatives, if you can give it more positives, meaning more credit cards with making on-time payments and stuff on them, then just think about those as your classes, right? You're acing this class, then you're going to have a better GPA. You got 3 A's, for example, and 1 E, then your GPA is going to kind of show that. If you come to someone like us, this is when disputes come in. All I'm doing is I'm telling you pretty much to drop that class. If you get it deleted, we're dropping the E. If you drop the E class, you're back to a 4.0, So that's kind of just... I like to tell people to just simplify it, man, because if not, you're going to get lost in the sauce with all of this stuff. There are so many things involved to credit. So simplifying it is a lot easier to follow it along and understand it.
Got it. So could you kind of like elaborate on what is considered good and negative, and like on the credit report, and like what are common positives and negatives?
Yeah, so again, it's all about different trade lines. Trade lines can kind of blanket a bunch of stuff here, but trade lines pretty much just means that things that are revolving, they continue to report onto your credit. So like credit cards, auto loans, those things are good stuff if you're making on-time payments for them.
So just that one more time?
Yeah, so make sure you're making on-time payments for these things. Make sure you're making on-time payments, auto loans, credit cards. Those are, in the analogy we use, those are classes that you could be taking. You just have to ace them. If you're acing them, those are going to be the positive. Now, since your credit only sees positive or negative, the moment that, this is the portion a lot of people don't realize, but you can have a credit card open for years on out, making on-time payment history for them. You miss one payment, it will turn the whole account from a positive to a negative, because then now you have one missed payment on there. Yeah, the whole thing is an algorithm, right? It calculates it based off of that. So yes, it still shows that you have on-time payment history, so it doesn't go completely out the window. But as far as that account is concerned, when the underwriter pulls it, it's going to show up as a red flag because you didn't pay on that. Again, if just simplifying the idea, it'd just be me and you borrowing money from each other. If I always made my payment on time to you, then more than likely, if I needed money later on, I could ask you again because you're confident that I can do that. If I miss a payment later on, you're like, damn, bro, I don't know. I need this money by the first. Aaron didn't come through last time. Even though I've been paying on time, that's generally what you're going to focus on because that's how you make your money. You make your money off interest rate. So those are going to be the negatives. So There's also different negatives, like pulling your credit too often. That's going to be negative. Again, making missed payments, negative. Things in collection, those are negative. Charge off are negative. Closed accounts are negative. So it can be a variety of things. Overextending your credit can be a negative. But again, positive stuff are making payments on time. You want to have a good credit mixture. A good credit mixture just means like you have like diversifying your credit. So it could be credit cards, auto loan, personal loans, unsecured loans, store cards. Those are ways to diversify your credit. Those would be good stuff there. So positive things.
Got it. Yeah. You mentioned getting credit pulled. Could you kind of like elaborate real quick? It kind of sounds for people not sure.
Of course, man. Yeah. So anytime you pull your credit when you're trying to qualify for something, it lowers down your score, or I want to say it lowers down your score because that's not always the case, depending on if that's your first time pulling it in like the last 2 years. But it does affect your credit. It shows that your credit has been pulled, so it will affect you for that. It's called a hard inquiry. Now, the reason why I emphasize that when your credit is pulled for trying to qualify for something is because a lot of misconception I have when people call me for a consult and I'll say that, hey, we have to run their credit report so I can see what they have going on. They always tell me that way isn't going to hurt my credit, and I always have to tell them, no, you can pull your credit as often as you like when you're just pulling it for yourself to check what you have. Now, you're not trying to qualify for anything, so it's not going to hurt you. Now, the general rule is you're not supposed to pull your credit, which is a hard inquiry, more than once every 2 years. Yeah, once more than every two years. This is the thing. So once every 2 years, it'll drop off. So if I apply for something today, 2 years later, it will drop off from that. So so it sounds like it's not a lot, but there's a reason behind it as to that. So I don't know. Do you want me to
Yeah, because I was gonna say more recently for I know like auto loans or like for like real estate. I know it's really common for real estate. If you're trying to get pre-approved for a crib, you're trying to get pre-approved for something. Usually you have to go to the bank or like Rapid Mortgage or something to like pull your credit. So is that considered a hard pull? And in those instances, is that like a once every 2 years?
Yeah, so it's definitely a hard pull. It's definitely a hard pull. And a lot of times our clients that call us they'll call us to just get their inquiries disputed because they went to a dealership and the dealership, like CarMax is notorious for this. Almost every car dealership will do it, but CarMax and other places that guarantees that they can approve people, they're notorious for that because what they'll do is they'll put their social in there one time and they'll say they'll just run it once. Yeah, they'll run it once through the system and multiple lenders will look at it. So I've seen people come from CarMax and they'll have like 20 to 40 different pools on there because they'll run it through the system. Because again, that's why they advertise that, oh, anybody can get a car through them because they'll put that system on there and
it's like a directory at that point.
Yeah, and at some point all these lenders are just on their computer that can just say who can approve and who cannot approve. And you can have the worst credit, but I guarantee you there's going to be a bank in America that qualifies you. Because if you run it 4 to 6 times, there's going to be someone like, yeah, we'll take his down payment. And and it might be predatory lending, but that's how that will go. Now, I understand your question. There are stipulations to it because you're shopping for the best rates possible, especially when you're applying for a home loan. But it can get very confusing because there's different scoring models, and I know we haven't gone into that yet, but the two main ones you're going to talk about is your Vantage score and your FICO score. But even then, there's multiple different versions of the FICO score. So currently there's 12 versions of the FICO score right now. Most places are still using FICO 8 and FICO 7 for when it comes to like home buying process and stuff. When it comes to banks, places are making the switch over to Vantage score, but again, it's going to depend on each of the lender. But the reason I'm saying that is because you can run your credit multiple times when you are shopping for again rates like a home loan. Now, the difference is different scoring models will allow you to pull credit multiple times based off of different timelines. So if you look it up, it's going to say that you have 45 days that you can continue to pull credit, applying it for like a home loan, for example. You can pull it multiple times for that. But what they don't tell you is that's only for FICO score 12. When it comes to like FICO score 8, it's going to be a different stipulation. I want to say it's 14 days. I could be wrong because there's so many. So honestly, even for those, I'll continue to look them up. But the way I generally like to tell people is just keep it all under a week when you're shopping for like a home loan. Just keep it around that same timeline as close as possible if you can, because since this is all just a computer and the computer is also not perfect, I want people to understand that. So a lot of times people will dispute with me back and forth saying, well, this is what the credit's supposed to do. You have 45 days. Yeah, what your credit is supposed to do, the credit bureau is supposed to do versus what they actually do is two different things. Yeah. So I always tell them just keep it as close as possible. If you're already shopping for a home loan, just try to keep it within that week if possible, if not in this 14-day time period. But you definitely want to try to keep it at a minimum. That's actually why when you're applying for a home loan, even when you're dealing with a realtor, most of the time they're going to have a local lender already available to you that they've already developed the rapport with, that they know it's good, that can work around whatever you have going on, because they can just pull your credit one time and that be it. Because if not, it will mess up your client, their client's credit. And we've seen it where people have applied for a home loan with like a 620, right? And that's their minimum that the lender is looking for. By the time they get to the closing table, because they applied so many places to run their report back to get approved for a home loan, then their score had dropped by the time they got to that closing table. So that's really why you want to be watchful for. The same reason for when you're trying to qualify for a car, you generally want to go and apply for your own loan first, secure that one loan, like go into your bank, and then walk into a dealership with a check already in hand, so they've already pulled it one time. So that would be the reason why you want to kind of secure your own loan first with the place that you already have the rapport for, so you can just pull it one time. Now, I know it's a lot of information there, but I do like to say that the reason why your credit is only supposed to be pulled once every 2 years is because, again, your credit is just your financial, it's your financial resume. So when people first call us in, we put their credit in a credit audit, and it comes out into a PDF file. When I go over it with them, it's a lot easier to understand, and it looks just like a financial resume. And what they don't understand is that's what lenders see. When lenders look at your credit report, they're not looking at it like you and me on Experian. It's all these things up here. Because if that's the case, they can't mass produce, you know what I mean? Like, can't continue to approve people. So when they run it through their software, it puts it in that format. And when you look at it that way, it's easy to understand this a resume. So just like any other resumes, it has your work history on there. So what your resume is supposed to do to show your credibility is, are you credible? So when they're applying for financing, they'll see that, hey, this guy applied for multiple places in the last 2 years. And you can see that on the credit report. So I can see that someone applied for a car loan, then they applied for a home loan, or maybe they applied for for like a store card or something. So you can see like, hey, this person is impulsive. This person is the type to walk into Macy's and talk to a credit card, and when the cash register is like, hey, you want to sign up for a credit card or Best Buy? They always start talking to that, and they'll see that. So that's what they're gonna see. They're gonna be like, damn, this guy walked into Macy's, applied for somewhere, he walked random Saturday, he saw a car lot, that's a nice car, I pulled over, I looked at it. Your resume, pretty much your financial resume, will see that, and that's what banks are seeing. So again, banks are just investors, man. So if you can make it and show them like, hey, I knew I was going to buy a house 2 years prior, so I started fixing my credit. Because again, it's going to show that. It's going to show that you started fixing your credit. You started lowering down your utilization. You started doing all these right things, and it's going to show in your credit report that, hey, if I'm the bank, I'm looking at it, it's like, this guy has definitely been putting in work. He's been lowering down his utilization, doing everything right. Then he applied for a home loan. Because what that allows me to do is the bank is just like, yeah, I'm going to give him a loan because I can tell he really wants his bet. He's been working for this. Just like the same way you would do when you're improving a resume. It's the same thing when it comes to your financial resume. Continue to improve that. So if a bank, again, you can have the perfect financial resume or the perfect resume for work. And if you've worked at multiple places in the last 2 years, you're not going to get hired. I don't care if you got a doctorate. You can have all the certifications for a job. But if you been working a bunch of places in the last 2 years and you put that in your resume, they're not gonna hire you, right? So it works the same way. And that's why that's the reason why inquiries are once every 2 years.
Got it. Okay. That was really some really good information on there. So a lot of gems. I
want to ask a question based off the improving credit. So I had seen a post. I know there was a time where WorldStar was posting a lot of like credit repair.
WorldStar was doing that.
Yeah, wow. They ads and stuff. So there was like real estate, then there was crypto, then there's NFTs. So I don't know if all that stuff's credible, but it all has its phases. But I did see a post where someone said a great credit hack was I think it was pay off. Don't wait to pay off. It was wait to pay off your bill. Wait till like the third day and then pay it off in full. Okay. And then your credit will go up the following month. So rather than pay it off right away, you have to wait maybe like a couple of days, or pay off maybe a little bit right before like the closing date, and then maybe leave a little bit so the interest can hit it, and then you pay the rest off. I want to know from your experiences that like.
Have
you ever told anybody, hey, wait to pay your bill?
Yeah. No, I have not done that. I think sometimes people have good intentions when I want to always think that people have good intentions when they give this advice, but a lot of times there are a lot of myths out here because things continue to get, it's like we're playing telephone, you know what I mean? Like I'm passing one good information to you, then you pass it on to your friend, and by the time it gets to the last person, it's something that's kind of messed up and it's different. I think what people mean to say is that you're supposed to find out the statement date of your cards and then zero it out if possible, zero out the whole thing, pay for the whole thing off, and then charge something on it again, and then just continue to repeat the cycle so you can build credit using your credit cards. That would be the way to do it. So, yeah, I think that's what they mean at least.
Yeah, it was a whole post. I was like, oh, this man's really confident about this. I remember this so I can ask you whenever I see him again.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many things because people try to hack the system. But people try to hack the system because, again, it is just a computer. And it's very hard to outsmart a computer, but it's just like Instagram, right? If you know the algorithms, that posting at a certain time, it's going to work the same, it's going to kind of hack the Instagram algorithm. And it works the same way, it's an algorithm. So if you can kind of... but there's real rules to it, though, that we just have to know. But if you're paying them on those dates, then you kind of hack the system. So,
He's like, I think it was wait till your statement date closed or right before it. Either way, I know it was, we'll have my amount due at the end of this month. And it was like maybe pay off most of it right before, then leave a little bit and then wait for that, that time to run out so the interest can hit it. And then I was like, it just sounds wrong. It sounds wrong.
Yeah. And sometimes too, man, they'll really trick people into thinking the way you're supposed to pay. For example, like the due date, us thinking that we're supposed to pay them on the due date, but it's actually not the case. We're supposed to pay them on the statement date, but it will confuse people. And then now banks are catching on to the fact that, hey, they're getting a little smarter. They're, a lot of times now when I talk to people, they understand, or they've seen something out there saying that we're supposed to pay them on our statement date. That's costing the banks a lot of money. So now what a lot of the banks do is they'll confuse people. They'll put the statement date their statement dates either after or before. In the past, after the due date.
I know I remember every single time I get my email, after. So my closing date's like the 28th, right?
Yeah.
So excuse me, spit. But they'll send my email 3 days after.
Yeah.
2 days
and see, it's confusing, right? Because before, even for me, my post on Instagram was just like, you want to pay on the statement date. And, the statement date is normally supposed to be prior to your due date. Now it's not the case because it's going to be after, and it confuses a lot of people. But so to anyone watching, the due date really is just it's crazy because they really trick consumers to think this, and in no other form do we think of due dates like this, like the way we do when it comes to credit. But it's only in credit. If anything else, if I tell you your homework is due on Tuesday, that it literally means that's the last day that it's due. Any other time after that is a penalty. So that doesn't mean you're making your payments on time. That doesn't mean you're making your payments early. It just means you're paying on the last day. But as consumers, it's made us think that, hey, if I'm making the payment right now, then I'm making the payment on time. But by the time you make the payment on the due date, you've already been hit with all of the interest rate. So you're supposed to figure out the statement date. So from the moment of your statement date to your due date, that gap, every day in the middle of that is when it's charging you the interest rate. So since we started getting smarter, people started paying on the statement date, then now the banks pretty much aren't getting the interest rate that they used to. So what they realized was, hey, let's pay this due date, the statement date after the due date, right? So back here. So now it confuses people because then now, my due date comes beforehand. Let me pay the due date. But all they're doing is they're extending the period. So let's say the original statement date to the due date we're used to is like 2 weeks, and that's the time it's accruing the interest rate. Now they do like a whole 30 days, so it puts the statement date after the due date. But it's still the same thing. If anything, now they're just charging you more interest rate because they've extended it out. So still goes to saying you still want to pay on the statement date. You just want to call your bank first, talk to them, tell them what you're trying to do, because since it's set up that way, for the most part, people are always going to be behind from their statement date. So when I call my bank and I tell them that, I always get caught up to my current due date first, and I'll pay that, and then I want to let them know moving forward, set my payments up to only be on the statement dates. So
Smart. That's a gem.
Those are all welcome for that question.
For sure. So, credit cards, right? So we just talked about payment. So can we kind of like backtrack a little bit and kind of like, all right, some people have good relationships with credit cards. Some people have bad relationships with credit cards. Some people are like, credit, buy on credit. Yeah. People are like, stay away, right? So, can you kind of speak about kind of like what's your take on credit cards and what are some best practices for credit cards?
Yeah. So, credit cards can be tricky because you have multiple different ones. It's hard to speak on. Well, obviously for this point, I'm going to speak generally in regards to it, but certain credit cards will have. So first of all, your limits, right? So every card is going to have a limit. Whether well, not every card. There's obviously like black cards don't have limits to them, or charge cards don't have limits to them. But for the most part, most cards are going to have a limit to them. So the way you're supposed to use credit cards is just paying them based off of, again, the statement date, like we said, and using this in order to build your credit history. Then now you also want to figure out what your total limit is of that card and only pay a certain amount, only use a certain amount off the utilization. The utilization is the amount of credit you're using. So it also goes off of the tier system. So 0 to 9% is the excellent range as far as the utilization goes. 10 through 29% is considered good. 30 up is considered fair, and anything over that is pretty much poor than very poor. Now, pay attention to what I said and the fact that 30% is already crossing over to the next tier of it being fair category. Yeah. So every time you ask people what credit is supposed to be at, their credit card limit, people always say 30%. That's one of those misconceptions because, again, people are, the right term is 10 to 29% is good, but people are just rounding off to 30, and that's been a myth that's been spread around. By the time you get to 30, you crossed over a different tier system, and then now you're already in the fair category. So that's pretty much how it goes. And it's also very difficult for you to do what we just talked about, which is zeroing out your the whole balance if you're already at 30%. It's really very difficult to do that for most people, on a month-to-month thing. Versus if you're at the 0-9% range, that's not really a lot. You should be able to zero that out every month and continue to do it that way. You want to be very careful with credit cards, though, because like you said, is that something I'm supposed to have or anything? And I know, especially for certain communities who aren't as educated in regards to credit, like the minority community, I don't want to generalize there, but I know at least for me and my community out here, when I talk to people every day, that's something we weren't taught. And I know for us growing up, it's just like, no, don't get credit cards. Don't get credit cards. Credit cards, the devil. You don't want to fall into the trap. Yeah. But no, actually, that mindset sets us back, right? Yeah. Because by the time we're old enough trying to do something legit, whether it's to move out of your house or whatever it may be, you don't have any credit. Yeah. So it sets you so far back from your counterparts, because by the time we're, working age or actually like old enough to definitely get into a house or get into a car, we go to these places and we realize we don't have any credit. But it's unfair because then you see other people that's going straight from colleges or stuff, or maybe even high school, and they already have great credit, bro. Like, and that's how much of a disadvantage we are into there. But it's because, again, of that literacy we're trying to get out there. We want people to understand that, no, credit is good. There's such thing as good debt. You just need to be able to use it right. Yeah. So credit cards are definitely a good thing. Just try to, shop around for a credit card, look for good approval rates, look for places that also the APR rates aren't crazy. But if you're starting out, more than likely, you might not have access. You're not going to have access to like an Amex or anything like that. But as long as you're doing it the way we just mentioned, where you're using it just to build your credit, like a secured credit card, most of the time, a lot of secured credit cards too have very high APR rates. Cards that if you have a bad credit or no credit, the first cards that you get are going to have crazy rates to them. But if you use it the 0-9% way, paying them the statement date, for one, the interest rate is not going to hit you. Yeah. Secondly, you're just getting all the good from there first. So it's definitely a need to it. And you can also use your credit card in very smart ways. So, yeah.
Do you have any, no free promo, but any recommendations for like beginner credit cards or anything like that?
Honestly, I would say start with your bank first. Anytime people ask that, I always say start with your bank, as long as you're with a legitimate bank. No shade or anything like that, but sometimes people will stick to a lot of these online bankings. They really target millennials because, it's online. Yeah. So even Gary Vee had said that now, just like by the time our kids open up bank accounts, it's not going to be like when we opened up bank accounts and our parents took us or grandparents took you. Now kids are just opening up online, but those banks, it's all a computer. It's no one to talk to and stuff in person. So it's a lot harder, and it's, well, I want to say it's harder. It's less informed, and there's a lot more higher APR rates in regards to those. So if you're starting, I would say start with the banks that you already have a rapport with first. So credit unions are a great start. If you're working with a credit union and you've already been banking with them, you might not have credit, but rapport with your bank is important, because I might not have credit, but if I've been banking with, I don't know, Bank of America or Navy Federal, whoever it is, since I've been working, then they know that there's income coming into that bank account. They know they can lend to me and I can pay that back. So I would start with them first versus going out to a different bank with your hand out and just giving your information and you don't have anything to show for it. So then, pretty much you don't get the best rates. So
got it. Yeah. And you briefly mentioned is like, what should I be looking out for then? You said they'll probably be having high APR rates. Could you just like, what's an APR rate?
Yep. So that's the interest rate there. Yeah. So, well, there's actually different. There's like principal interest, and then there's also like APR stands for annual percentage rate. So there's different ones, but just to make it easier, it's just interest rates. So pretty much that's for anything too. Even applying for a car, there's going to be APR rates to them. So your job is to just try to find the the lowest interest rates there are. So for one, it affects everything. It affects your monthly payment. It affects how much principal interest gets tied to there. If your rate is too high, then you're just continuing to build the debt. So it's harder for you to build.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. We went over proper methods.
On that too, I do want to say that definitely do your due diligence. That's a good thing now that we have all this online stuff, right? Like I said, with millennials, we have Google, we have this stuff. So these places you might walk in, like I know when I was first buying a car, I didn't know what was high, what was low. So 20% doesn't sound like a lot interest rate. I'm like, 20%, that's nothing. I know there's 100% out there, so 20% doesn't sound like a lot. But most people that are buying cars that don't have great credit have crazy interest rate. A crazy interest rate would be really, to me, it can be anything. 10% to me is crazy. 8% for me is crazy. But a lot of these places will have 26% interest rate. Yeah. So I'll see that all the time. If you have a car that has a 26% APR, you're never going to get out of the car. Yeah. All that really means is, again, the reason I'm saying this is because you can Google it. I'm no math whiz. I suck at math, but I can go and look it up through softwares, through apps. Hey, if I'm getting this car with 26%, what does that come out to? And most of the time, like 26%, depending on the loan, all it really means is getting tacked on all this extra debt per day. So 26% on a normal car, it's probably going to be, I don't know, man, like let's say like $30 a day that they're adding on per day, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you do 30 times, it's 31 days in a month, whatever that is, that's what's continuing to be added on every month. And then as it's building, so let's say this month alone, there's certain amount of money that got put to debt, right? Yeah. Well, next month it's another month, and there's more debt that's added on to again. So that's why most of the time you'll hear people say, "Man, I had this car for X amount of years, 5 years. I'm almost at the end of my loan." They go look at it and they're like, "Damn, I'm nowhere close to paying this off," because all that accrued debt, all that accrued stuff is getting continued add on. So every day you're just adding $30 more, and those.
That's how they keep you, bro.
Yeah, and those balances. If you have a large balance there, it's charging off of that balance too. So it's just continuing.
It's really funny because then it's the people who are stuck under that thumb that go ahead and go tell maybe they have kids, don't get too many credit cards, don't get a credit or don't get credit cards, period, and then you set back and then you're constantly back in that.
And that's exactly what banks want to do, man. You're what's called a captive audience or their captive target market, because when you get to the point, there's really nowhere for you to go. Now they own you. Yeah. And you see a lot of people talking about that too. Jay-Z talks about that. Kanye talks about modern day slavery. I still think that is a form of modern day slavery, because by the time you get paid or before you even get paid, your money is already owed to someone. Before you even get your paycheck, your money is already owed somewhere else, and you're pretty much stuck there. So the banks want you to be stuck in this loophole. Like you said, you'll never get out of this car. And there's so many shady practices to that, and banks want you to do that because, again, they make their money off interest rate. If they get that car from you, because 26%, again, you're never getting out of the car. So most of the time, what do people end up doing? Like, they try to trade it in, they can't. They're going to be upside down on the loan because, again, there's all that debt is going to roll over, so they can't get out of it. So what I always see in the life cycle of a 26% car at high interest rate, they'll end up doing a voluntary repossession. So it'll ruin their credit. And also, banks want you to do that because what happens is that originally you put down a down payment on that loan. once you put down a down payment on that loan, they'll go and they'll take the down payment for you gladly, and they know it's going to get repoed at some point. Now, you've probably been paying for that car maybe for a year, 2 years, or whatever. You realize you can't make the payments for it. Now we're going to come and repo that car and also keep your interest rate. And then now they can go resell that car again. And they resell it at auction. And most of the misconception people don't realize is that when you give it for voluntary surrender, you are still liable for that debt. So whatever it sells for at the auction, let's say a $20,000 car sells at the auction for $10,000. There's $10,000 left of that loan. You still have to pay the $10,000 loan. You didn't get out of it. Dang. And even though sometimes it sounds more manageable for people, okay, I can do $10,000. Or honestly, for the most part, people are like, I'm not paying this because, I don't even have the car anymore. But if you do start paying on it, you're still never going to get out of it because it's still going to continue to add the interest and the debt. So now the bank owns you. They own you. You cannot get out of that. And that's when people start going down the bankruptcies and do all these things. And now you're going to start from scratch. So that's also why information like this is so valuable, because if you don't know it, then you do get stuck into that cycle. And they want to make consumers. That's all they really want to do. The more consumers, the better. There's so many different documentaries about this on Wells Fargo and stuff, trying to hold their audience. And there's even people that I deal with that have got approved through predatory lending. Most of the time, if you're behind on your car, first of all, you shouldn't try not to be behind on anything, obviously, because it's going to ruin your credit. But I want to say a large part of the population is always 2 months behind their credit, because 2 months behind on their auto loan, because they know that on the third month is generally when they send out a repo order. So a lot of times people are 2 months behind, and then they're just making payments, trying to catch up. But as long as they're 2 months behind, then the car's not getting repoed. What we see all the time is that as you get closer to the end of that loan, or maybe you've had that loan for a little bit, the banks don't start waiting for the third month. They'll come repo that car after a month. They'll come repo that car after 2 months, because it does them no good. It does them no good if you pay the car off. If you pay the car off, then they have an asset that's already been paid off that's no longer there.
You make more money.
If I repo your car, that life cycle of that car can continue, because now what's going to happen? Again, they own you now because you still are liable for the rest of that debt. The car gets sold again, so now they got the payment from the auction. It gets resold. They get a whole new down payment for some other kid that doesn't know better. Yep. And that's why you see these old ass Dodge Challengers and stuff on the lots that's continue to be recycled, because the banks are pretty much looking at it like, well, why would I sell this Dodge Challenger one time to one guy who gave me, $5,000 down payment? You were making payment on it. We're going to come get it from you. And then we're going to go and continue to do this over and over again. Then now we want to scale that and multiply it by that 3 million cars that they might, or 3 billion cars that they have out there. And that's how banks stay rich as fuck, because I don't even know if I can cuss, but that's how they stay rich, man. Because then now you have this never ending cycle that can continue to do there. And a car will continue to do that for 10 years. You can get a loan on a car as long as it's not over 10 years old. So just think about how much money a bank probably makes off of a single car before doing that. So.
It's crazy, because once you start thinking about it, we were having a conversation the other day kind of about like taxes and how the government's mad gangster on how
mad gangster.
How it takes taxes at every single level.
Yeah.
Anytime money switches hands, they taking some money away from taxes, right? So kind of you talking about the banks, it sounds literally like the same thing, right? And like you see posts, maybe hear people just talk about like, literally like modern day slavery and things like that. And it's like, when you hear like that, and when you hear like that, right, it makes you want to kind of, it makes sense. If you're not educated, it makes you want to stay away, right? And that's where the thing is, right? Because it's like you have to know the rules, and you have to know how to play, right? You have to know how to play the game according to the rules. But no, that's real.
Discipline. It's a lot of discipline and that intentionality to don't just buy anything just because obviously, like you just said, like it has so many repercussions. And if you're simple, I guess, I mean, we all get older, right? So our needs and wants change.
Changes per season.
I'm not gonna just want shoes and food or whatever. I'm gonna want to go on a flight or try. Hey, I'm gonna try for. I'm on this flight. American Airlines, give me a credit card. Let me go apply. You know, and all that, all that other stuff. So it does change as we get older. So that's, you said a lot. So I was just sitting there like blanked out, but I was focusing, thinking about everything you said, because that stuff, like,
it's a lot, man.
Like, all
so
that
many
stuff
things.
is getting stored and everything. Like I have to remember these things because that's something I don't know. My parents don't know. My brother probably doesn't know. My whole family doesn't know. So that saves generations. Cause that was
generations, man. And see, man, I hate to keep going back to that example, but modern day slavery and it's such a real thing because once they own you, debt is also transferable even through debt. So we always talk about generational wealth. There's always such a thing as generational debt. And for the most part, if I was a bank and I owned you going through the practices, one of the practices I just mentioned, the next people will get that as well. A prime example, reverse mortgages, right? They target elderly people, and just to kind of briefly talk about it, reverse mortgages, they normally are predatory loans towards a bank. So they'll go through like your grandma who's been paying on her house forever. She's in a tight situation because now, she's older, she's not working. She might have ran through like, it's only so much your Social Security can cover and everything. So a bank comes to them like, hey, beautiful house here. We'll lend out to you based off the equity of the home. So if the house has $40,000 equity, we'll give you $40,000 in a reverse loan. There's different stipulations in regards to it, but for the most part, grandma's not going to make it till the end of making the payments. And I hate to laugh and say that, but it's like, it's almost, it's not a funny laugh. It's more so like, this shit is ridiculous. Like they know the lady isn't going to make it, but she's going to take that out because she needs that cash and to try to give it to them. And the house that you're thinking that you guys all grew up in, that you guys to spend Sundays together still, moving forward, even if grandma's not there, is not going to be available to you there anymore because the bank's going to take that house, and which was originally supposed to be generational wealth, is no longer generational wealth. It's something that has been taken from the bank from you guys so that they can do the same thing that they just did with the car with this house. Or I've literally seen this because this happened to one of my boys, man. I don't want to speak on their family, but their grandma was pretty much, I don't want to say she was like my grandma, but I spent a lot of time there. I spent a lot of time there. Grandma definitely looked out for everyone. We didn't know that she had a reverse mortgage, but at the end, after all of that, the bank then goes back and offers the house back to the family. They can offer the house back to the family because they know every purchase is an emotional purchase, whether you know it or not. Every purchase is going to be an emotional purchase. So you're thinking you have this house deal and you don't. So then the bank will come to them first because this is your ideal client. This should be what's called a lay down sale for anything else. I'll come to you and be like, hey, man, you want your grandma's house back? Like, we'll give it to you for this much, which is crazy because grandma been paying for this house for years.
It first.
Yeah.
We had it first.
You own it first, but it doesn't matter. But it's like, I'm trying to sell you your own shit back with the crazy interest rate. And then on top of it, you probably, man, it's so much deeper. You still got to pay the debt. You still property tax on top of it. Like, there's just so many things to it. So
there's so many different examples, right? And I like going through it because everyone kind of has their own personal situation.
Yeah, but I like what you said, man. It's just like, it's generational. It's generational. The banks realize that, and that's what we mean by modern day slavery. It doesn't just stop with you. It's just something that continue, and banks counter that.
I've spoken to so many people and they make credit card debt sound normal, like it's part of. And a comment on something I was gonna. Last thing I personally had to say, in general about credit was I know a lot of people. The common misconception is they view their credit card as another source of income. So if their limit is $2,500, and let's say maybe they use half, so $1,250, and they end up at a 50. They think, okay, I have an extra $15,000 a year to spend. It's like, no, that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not the case.
It's not the case. Right. You're putting yourself, and I know so many people who do that.
Living off credit,
a lot of Americans. I know it's common. A lot of Americans rely on their credit card as a second source of income, which is a big issue. That's not how you're supposed to live your life. And I'm just so many. I'm not get too personal, but I know a lot. I tell him all the time, like, it's crazy how some people were like, I just got this much money and I'm gonna throw it to pay off my credit card. I'm like, how much are you in debt? One person I had like $7,000 and they just made it sound normal. Like,
and that's not even a lot. That's not even a lot.
And that's because it's like, oh yeah, daddy, daddy, mom, they had credit card debt. It's fine, and like you're staying over water.
Not in my life, bro.
You can't
as long as I
because
live.
you're not. The money's not yours at that point.
Yeah,
like you said, every time you get paid, now it's like you can't even really fully enjoy it because it's like, oh, either I have to enjoy it or I have to go pay back. Yeah.
And banks know that. That's why even like most cars, like high interest rate cars, like we were mentioning. They'll have people on bi-weekly payments. Why? Because you get paid bi-weekly. So it's just like, oh, word, bro, you get paid on the 1st and the 15th? Okay, go ahead and take this car. Go ahead and take this car. Let me get a little bit. I'm going to hold $1 every 1st and the 15th. So that's pretty much what they do, man. It's crazy.
Do you have any good best practices for getting out of credit card debt? I know some people kind of have, there are different methods out there. So give
Honestly, bro, I'm gonna tell y'all the wrong way first, which is crazy because people are, I'm gonna tell you the right way. I'm gonna tell you the real, like the real tea, like the real way first, which is not the right way. It's wrong. Because obviously you want to do it the right way, making your payments and stuff to it. But I also think you have to be real to yourself. You have to be real to yourself. Before I started, right? Because people think that I've always known all this stuff. I didn't. That's what got me into this lane, is because I didn't know it, and then I realized, damn, none of us know this, and then there's nobody speaking on it. And credit repair isn't new. The only difference is now, thank God for social media and stuff, that now I think that finance has been romanticized. Having good credit has been romanticized. Yeah. And then you got cool ass looking people out here who's talking about credit. So that's even why, like today, I'm not wearing a suit. I want to show up here with a hat and fit in my tattoo style because I want to be relatable. Yeah. But that's what brought me into this lane, because I realized that, nobody's talking about this that I can approach, So now I wanted to speak on that. Now, when I started going through this and I didn't have the information, I also kept it real to myself. And I looked around and I'm like, damn, bro, like, there's no way for me to get out of my debt because I've overused my income. I have multiple cars. I have this house. I have, all these other obligations I'm paying for. Like I said, before I even get paid, my money is already owed and promised to someone. So generally, this is how everybody lives. By the time, you get your check, it's already all gone. And you only have a very small amount left that's not even enough for you to really do anything with groceries, gas, all those things. And that's why most of the time people are living paycheck to paycheck. I'm saying that because the wrong way is the way I did it, which I looked around and I kept it real myself. Damn, I can't afford this. So I can try to pick up a side job and see if that'll do it. Or I realized that I overextended and I'm just going to go ahead and surrender these things. So to me, I surrendered those items also because if you go look at my socials, I talk about my testimony, right? I went from like a 2-income household to one because it was like a divorce that I didn't expect. So I just kept it real to myself. It doesn't matter what I was doing. I'm only one person. So unless by some miracle I get like a crazy ass promotion, at the time I wasn't a business owner. So I get a crazy ass promotion. There's no way for me to pay to go from make it seem like I'm making 2 incomes, and pay for that. So I just had to give it up for repo because what I like to tell people is that the insanity is just doing things over and over again, right? So I hate that I know people that I have some friends who are in this loophole, and it's just like, damn, bro, like every paycheck they're stressed because they can't make ends meet. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you, like the same thing is gonna happen every paycheck. You're gonna be every first of the month. You're gonna be stressed because you know why? You made the same amount last month. Yeah. You got the same bills this month. Yeah. If you were stressed last month because you couldn't make ends meet, what makes you think you can make ends meet this time? You didn't have enough money the months before. You didn't have money for it the years before. What makes you think you're gonna have it now? So you just have to come to that realization and either pick up a side job and make that. If you can't, then you just have to give it up and work from there. It's better than just slaving away your whole checks. So I went through that way. Then I went to the credit repair way. And a lot of places will do it too, like national debt consolidation. That's what they get people to do, is stop paying for stuff, wait till it gets to collection, and then they start settling. Definitely don't advise anyone to go through national debt, the national debt way, the national debt crisis thing, because that's a predatory thing as well. I don't want to dig into that right now, but yeah.
Got it. Okay.
I'm gonna have a perfect credit score at the end of this. All right.
That's the goal, man. That's the goal.
I learned a lot. Thank you again. Yeah. First time I learned a lot. Second time learned even more. Yeah. Definitely gonna throw some of this stuff into my regular expenses because for a fact, I mean, I'm sure we all related to everything that was talked about today. So, sure. Thank you.
Do you have any final tips, advice, warnings?
Yes.
For people?
There's so many, man. So again, for one, I like to be just someone for people to approach to and ask questions. So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to come to me because there's so many stuff out here that we're not even scratching the surface, right? Yeah. But I do want people to know as well that credit is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I know we've kind of talked about all the don'ts, but we've also kind of briefly talked about the do's as well. But if you're doing it the proper way, credit is so powerful because it can build you the generational wealth. It can get you into these places that otherwise you won't be able to pay for in cash. Yeah. If you take out if you can purchase a house, build generational wealth, take the equity from there. There's so many ways to do it, and there's also so many practical ways to do it. It doesn't have to be. I feel like a lot of times people talk about credit, it's always about buying a house and stuff right away. I see kids, man, like these young millennials learning from TikTok, literally using their credit cards, buying sneakers, right, flipping them around, but buying sneakers with a credit card, paying them off before the statement date, so they never really got to be hit with anything. They never used their own money because they're using the banks. By the time the statement date hit, they pay it, they get all the increase. And then before the 30 days comes up, they've already sold the shoe anyways. So they literally have never paid for it themselves, and they just continue to do that over and over again. So there's practical ways of doing it, man. And it's just smart. There's such thing as good debt, and we need that. Debt is also very cheap. Dig into that a little bit because there's a lot of information there, but debt is cheap. So if you're starting a business, if you're purchasing things that you believe you can sell, just like what I was mentioning, debt is cheap. So do it that way. Just make sure you're doing it right and don't fall in that pit. Because again, there's so many pits out here that the banks have set up so you can be a captive audience. But there's also multiple ways that you can be smart about it. Just like all these millionaires who don't use their own card or their own debit card, they also keep it in a credit card. So credit is definitely a good thing. Just know how to use it properly.
Sure. That's a good wrap up.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Like I said,
Of course, man. Of course.
Right? And that's information you definitely have to refresh yourself too, right? Because like you said, laws changed.
Yeah.
And obviously every credit card is gonna be a little bit different with different like perks. So some credit cards might be better for travel. We're talking about that today. Some credit cards might be better for travel. Some might be better for everyday purchases. So you have to get yourself familiar with that. Do it smart. That's
don't just sign up for no credit cards.
Do it smart. That's like the really, really, really key thing, because like we say a lot about other things, like it's just a tool, right? And how you use it.
All it is a tool.
How you use it. How it gets.
And that's a great thing you're saying. It's all a tool. I tell people that all the time is that credit cards are just tools. So. Just like tools have different purposes, cards have different purposes. Just make sure you're equipping yourself, having the right tools in your toolbox, pretty much.
Yeah, so, for sure. So, where can people find you? Where can people find you on social media, on Instagram?
So I got to give this spill, man. My Instagram, it's my personal Instagram. So a lot of times people go in there and be like, oh, how's this the credit guy? He's posting all his personal stuff. That's the part that I'm trying to cross over. I want people to realize that, you don't have to be a like this business page that's selling you stuff. Yeah, my Google will say just a business page. So, but the people through Instagram, I want to be able to connect with you guys. I want you to see that everything is just normal. You can do through what I'm doing too. So, my Instagram is going to be Aaron, AARON _ Sean, SEAN, then H. So Aaron Sean H. Aaron _ Sean H. So.
Got it. Yep. And Virginia Credit Repair.
Virginia Credit Repair. You can Google us, search Virginia Credit Repair, or you can just put vacreditrepair.com. Schedule your own consult. We make it as easy as possible. Our website is very user and millennial friendly. Just hit free credit consultation, pick your date, and we start talking from there pretty much.
All right, awesome.
Yep.
Any last housekeeping items, Mr. Akpi?
No, I mean, do you have anything coming up? Did we get across that?
No, man, not right now. Nope, nothing right now. Just I am trying to get the information out there more and more though. So. Please stay tuned, follow, and same thing, follow you guys, because we were just talking. They have a bunch of stuff coming up as well. They're actually doing a pop-up this weekend and interviewing other business owners, so you guys definitely want to tap in.
Together we stand this weekend. That's right.
So, thank you very much.
Of course, man. Thank you guys.
Very much, Aaron. That was really educational. Help me, help us, help you guys. So, we'll put this up as soon as possible. Thank you again for collabing, coming on the show again. Hope you guys learn. All right. So, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.